Hello?
Hey,
Okay, I was making sure y'all
we
can hear me.
yeah, we are live. I'm trying to get um let's see. Okay. I'm about to all right, y'all. We're live. We are live. And this is ADOS Atlanta. It's such a pleasure. We're gonna have a great show today. We've got a nice panel, and we're gonna have a very good discussion. We're talking about the city of Atlanta, issues. We're going to be talking with the community. Y'all already know us, ADOS Atlanta. We stand for American Descendants of Slavery, and we're pushing for reparations and the Black agenda. And we're so honored to have on with us tonight President of the City Council, the Atlanta City Council, Felicia Moore. How you doing, Felicia Moore?
I am wonderful, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Hello, Felicia. Hello, Felicia. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
And we also have Donovan Dodd. Let me click you on here, brother. Donovan Dodd is NPUR chair, the chair for NPUR. And good to have you, brother. We also gonna have Andre Dickens, councilman at large for the city of Atlanta. I'm sorry, Donovan. How you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing well. How are y'all doing?
What's up, Donovan?
Excellent.
Great. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely glad to be here.
Cool.
Yes. And we're gonna have Robbie Caven come in pretty soon, have this discussion. So yes, the purpose of this conversation is it's a lot going on in the city, and we're here to learn. We're here to learn. We're here to get solutions. We're here to have a conversation about some of the things that's going on. One of the main things that's going on, I guess we need to start with, first of all, Madam President, I want to give the city of Atlanta, the city council, I want to give y'all some props for passing the bill to stop solicitors, land developers from soliciting homeowners. So has that bill been passed, and could you go into that a little bit?
Yes, that was sponsored by Councilmember Matt Westmoreland, who chairs our Community Development Human Services Committee. And it's just a first step. I believe you can consider it maybe an acknowledgement of the fact that this is a major issue across the city. The next step is figuring out how we actually can enforce it and who all that we need at the table to help in its enforcement. So that's kind of where we are now. One, I think a good acknowledgement of the fact that we have the issue, but secondly will be how we actually can go after these people and enforce it. I don't know if that's me or not. I think it is me. Hold on. Okay. I might need my earphones, so I might have to go get my earphones.
Okay, you sound great right there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've talked to a lot of residents, and when you talk to a lot of residents, they've said that they were getting pressured back to back. People, land developers, investors coming to them, pressuring them to sell their house, pressuring them to get, So that'll be great. So what do you think needs to happen for that
Let
to
me-
become a reality?
Well, let me give you a couple of perspectives on that because I'm an associate real estate broker. So I kind of have a little sense of what's going on because I suffer from that as well, where I get either mail, call, and a lot of solicitations wanting to buy houses. And some of it is just them casting that net out there to see who might be willing to sell. They pick certain areas, they call it farming. And some people are working with investors. The people who actually call you probably aren't the people who are going to buy the houses, but the people who are working for someone who's trying to buy the houses. And then you have some that are a little bit more unscrupulous, I should say, that will actually be more aggressive in trying to get homes from people, preying particularly on seniors and people that they know that they could get them to sign documents. I've had constituents show me documents. I had one constituent I can remember who called me because she knew I did real estate and said, "Hey, they're trying to buy my lot and they want to offer me $5,000 for it." I said, "Well, hold on, wait 1 second. Let me look it up because I'm an agent." I looked it up. I said, "Do not sell your lot for $5,000. The lots around there are going for $50,000. And so it's just a matter, she did not know the value of her property. And as time went on, I told her, you really don't need me. I don't need to make a commission off of it. Once she got someone who was offering her what I saw as a market rate, I told her that sounds good. They're gonna offer you $55,000. That's a little bit more than what I see that's being sold. Go for it. And so I think that there is a role to play in terms of education, where there's somewhere where we can first educate people to go to a source that will give them real numbers. And that's why I encourage people to hook up with real estate agents or someone. If you want to sell your house or your property, get you an agent and put it on the market so that you're making sure you're getting the market rate. But these investors, they're not going to buy your property unless they get it on pennies on the dollar. And that's well under market value so that they can make money on the uptick.
Yeah. I got a question about that piece of legislation. Does it include those signs they be putting on, stop signs and poles and stuff?
Well, it doesn't, but we already have laws against that. And those are illegally posted if they're on the poles, if they're in the city right of ways, they're illegal and should be removed. And if they bother you, go remove them. And who's going to stop you? So they're not supposed to be on those sign poles, but that's another way that they lure people. But typically, their tactics are more to get with you personally, whether it's knocking on your door, sending you mailers, or calling you and giving you a price over the phone. And for some people, if somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to buy your house for $25,000, $30,000, they think, "Ooh, I'm going to get $25,000 or $30,000 for that piece of lot, that land that it's in the family that we're not doing anything with." And I just keep getting code enforcement complaints on. But if they don't get a professional to look into it for them to make sure they're getting the market rate, they're getting cheated. And two, if you sell your house undervalued in this market, where are you going to live? Because you're not going to maybe be able to take that money and buy another house with it. And I don't think people think that way. It's just an education piece that's lacking in our community, particularly in terms of the value of property and how important it is for you to keep it.
Well, I think, for African Americans, when you don't have like any money or barely any more money, and somebody comes to you with $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, that does sound like a lot. And
that's where we end up on the short end of the stick.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we have Robbie Caven joining us and Andre Dickens, Councilman at Large. Thanks for checking in with us, y'all. How y'all doing tonight?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining.
Great. Yes, thank you. So I was wondering about the legislation that was about, it was to stop granting tax breaks to investors that pull up.
What are you wondering about it?
I think are you referring to the legislation where the council asked that the Fulton County Development Authority stop granting tax breaks within the city of Atlanta? I think that may be what you're referring to. We have Invest
Yes,
Atlanta,
please.
which is the city's development arm. And what some investors have been doing to get around some of our affordability requirements, as well as some of our requirements as to who we would give those breaks to, they would go outside of the city, which would be going to Invest Atlanta, also known as our Atlanta Development Authority, and they go to the county's development authority to get those tax breaks. And so the council, this is not our first time, but have several times asked and pleaded and then demanded that they stop granting tax incentives inside the city of Atlanta.
So Council President is correct. To further explain, I don't know how much your viewers know, but inside of the city, you have 3 taxing agencies. The city of Atlanta is about 25% of your property tax. Fulton County is about 25%, and the school system is about 50%, thereabouts, roughly. And so as incentives for development, sometimes they waive those taxes or abate them or delay them for 10 years in certain deals. Invest Atlanta understands that in order for that exchange to happen, if we're going to give away public tax incentives, then we ought to get a public benefit out of those incentives in the form of something like affordable housing, or in the form of something that provides jobs. I sat on the board for 3 years, and we set that up to require affordability for anybody that's coming in to get those incentives. You had to provide affordability. You would not get any incentives if you did not provide workforce housing. Fulton County never did that. That wasn't their MO. So what they were doing was, when a developer would go to the city of Atlanta, would go to Invest Atlanta and say, hey, I want to get a tax incentive so I can build XYZ, then the Invest Atlanta will say, hey, you got to exchange that with some affordability, which is going to cut into your margins. They would then walk out of that door and go right to Fulton County, the Fulton County Development Authority. They could have gone to DeKalb if they were in DeKalb, in that slither of the city that's in DeKalb. And DeKalb understood the game too, and they didn't really buy into it. But Fulton would, and how Fulton would benefit is they would get this money for the transaction fees for these deals. We stopped it for a while on residential projects. That was a piece of legislation we passed in 2016. But they would still do it on commercial projects, and so now we just said, don't play in our field, because because Fulton could do it on their own, and therefore Atlanta and the school system would still be subject to abating these taxes without our input and without our citizens' desire to even see these incentives go forward. So I applaud the council for taking that additional step, and Fulton County Development Authority put up their resistance and kind of explained why they were doing what they were doing, but at the same time we thought it was unnecessary. Some of these deals they were doing were in areas that developers don't need incentives to build. You don't need a single incentive right now to build in Buckhead, Midtown, Upper West Side, as it's called now, West Midtown. You don't need a single incentive to build along Old Fourth Ward. You don't need any tax abatement. We don't need to see you, because you got what you need. You got all the incentive is right there in the amount of attractiveness of your land and the infrastructure that's there. and desire that people have to live, work, and play in those areas. So I think the council did a good job with that.
So I have a question about, and maybe Donovan, if you could speak to this as a chair of an NPU, NPUR, the power that the residents have when it comes to memorandums of understanding versus CBAs. How can we give residents more power as far as the NPUs when it comes to neighborhoods versus investors? And before our council person speak on that, can you speak to that a little bit, Donovan?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I would like to see going forward is a more vested interest being given to the decisions of the community. I was vice chair of NPUR last year and recently elected chair for this coming year. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that there's always this, it seems as if community engagement is nothing but a box that has to be checked off for development. There's not a true earnest interest in community engagement, and it seems as if the developers are aware of that. Aware that there's a box that they have to check, saying that they have come to the NPU. And so really what I would like to see is a structural change on the way city council evaluates some of the investors that come in and the process, taking a look at the process in general on how we can give a heavier stake or a heavier weight to community involvement, and really either trying to find a way that some of these things that we've worked on, like either a memorandum of understanding, community benefits agreement, making those more binding, and also really making sure that developers are meeting the needs of the community, right? So we have a lot of different plans, LCIs and other studies that residents take a lot of time to plan out and go to these meetings, and developers still come in with developments and projects that have nothing to do with the LCI, but that go in direct contrast to what the community has decided to do.
I'll take just a quick stab at that to say, first of all, the NPU system is a part of our charter, it's a part of the city, and it's advisory. And so we had to start, let me turn this down so it doesn't make that noise. So at first we had to start with the fact that it's an advisory opinion, but I believe that you're correct that many developers see it as a box to check off. But when it beyond what the developer sees, what should happen is that in the decision-making process with the council, that advice from the NPU have weight and be a part of their decision-making. So that means that whatever decision-making that the NPU says doesn't mean that everything the NPU says they want or how they want it is exactly what's going to happen. But it should take some, the council members from the district, the citywide council members, the mayor and others should take that advice into consideration, and where you can incorporate that into it. And I've seen that happen many times before. I think a lot of times citizens kind of get mad when something just really doesn't happen the way that they want. But I see on a lot of instances where it does work, when we have zoning issues, and I think Mr. Dickens can attest to this, that input from the NPUs ends up in laundry lists of conditions and things that we place on it to make sure that the community's input, whether it's ingress or egress or parking or height of buildings or affordable units, those things are put in there. So it just depends on the situation and how you can communicate and make sure that your council member who's there to represent you can make sure that it's as many of those things as the NPU want are incorporated in it.
Yeah, add to that, because Council President was actually 100% correct in everything she said. I think you have a case-by-case basis. There are literally times where I see developments get rejected fully. Can't go, done. They're mad. They bought land. They've been sitting on it. They had a plan. They got stopped by the community. They got stopped at zoning review board, or they got stopped at city council. I know that each of us can communicate about a time where the community's voice wasn't heard. I believe that those are unfortunate, and we have to continue to make sure that we do more to make that happen. But I'd be remiss, and I think it'll be incomplete for us to only talk in the terms of lack, but there's also tremendous strength that the NPUs have. So it will be negligent of us to say, man, this doesn't work. I can tell you, when Council President was a council member and I was the neighborhood president, there was a development of a new Walmart and all this whole shopping center. We put together a community benefits agreement. We put together the Northwest Atlanta Communities Alliance that still is in effect today. The presidents from each community, also the NPU leader. I mean, we literally told the Walmart what we did not want. We don't want guns in your Walmart. We don't want guns and ammo. We don't want a tire shop or auto shop. We already have auto shops in this area. We don't want, I mean, there was a laundry list of things we didn't want. Your shopping carts have to stop at a certain distance. This was new technology at that time. Like, we will not approve this with you doing this. Your Walmart, we don't want to see it. It needs to be underground because the land was on the slope. There was a number of community requirements, and there was a lot about water because it was on a hill, and it was like this water would roll down into these communities. The type of engineering that took place. I mean, I see that over and over and over again, but I also think that your concern is very valid. I don't want to invalidate it by giving you cases where it has worked, because there are significant cases where it hasn't worked. And that is up to us to organize and to make sure that throughout the process, I mean, remembering that council may be the last group that sees this. The first group may be the neighborhood association. We may or may not be at that meeting, and definitely not all 15 council members are at that meeting. Then the zoning review board, then the NPU, then the zoning review board, then it gets to city council as one of maybe 100 items on that zoning docket. And if it says something as long, but all it takes is one council member to say to the rest of the council, I don't like this in my community. This didn't meet the community's objective. And that voice does get heard. So, but I think that community benefits agreements are way more important than a community benefits plan, something that they hope and wish and suggest. And then they hope that over time you'll cooperate with them. Having a bona fide agreement with a signature and some documentation, those are the best way to go. And so if you have specific cases where you're speaking of about that in NPUR, current cases specifically, then bring those to forbear, because I'll tell you right now, I know one that's on Metropolitan where development is going in, and I was asked just last week to see how we can get a traffic light for this development by the community. And so we're working with GDOT and some others for that. And there were some design elements that they required that the developer do, and the developer met those design requirements and the affordability.
Right. So,
Robbie, jump in here, give your purview from your perspective in the real estate and what you see as far as gentrification is concerned. You trying to share a screen?
I was, but I'm happy to share some visuals, because I certainly don't want anyone to just take my word for it. I've been living in Southwest Atlanta. I'm familiar with Council President Felicia Moore, as well as our at-large Andre Dickens. And I think I know Donovan too. Do you volunteer at the animal shelter?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I know a few people on here. To the other folks, nice to meet you. I've been in Southwest Atlanta 10 years. I'm a licensed agent. I own my own firm. I've been specializing in a region for over a decade, noticing patterns. And I have to say, as someone who attempted to utilize the current engagement structure, the Atlanta NPU system, the neighborhood planning unit, founded under Maynard Jackson, with the specific objective that communities, collective communities, would have direct access to government officials and give input, I do believe that the system is broken. I respect Andre a great deal. I know him personally. He's been to my home as a guest, as a visitor. I welcomed him. I respect Councilwoman Moore. I understand that they both came in through the NPU, but my experience and my witness to what I viewed is that the system is in need of dire reform, and it is also complicit in the gentrification, displacement, eviction, and loss of generational wealth to legacy residents. And I will explain that. I'm happy to provide visuals. I'm happy to provide direct data from the experience that I witnessed throughout this process. I not only sat on leadership at the Capitol View Neighborhood Association, but I was the secretary for NPU, my NPU, NPUX. I also sat on the Economic Development Committee. I was the chair for that committee. We completed an entire comprehensive vision and plan. Andre was there at the release when it couldn't be released at the NPU because it was obstructed. With the help of our council person, Felicia Moore was present when we attempted to release it at the NPU meeting, when we were on the agenda and planning put us on the agenda. And again, the neighborhood associations, along with the help of the NPU, obstructed a chair that was appointed with a holistic vision. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why would that occur? And I think one thing that Andre stated was completely pertinent. When he stated the community came to him, well, who is the community? And in my opinion, the problem that we're having right now is that City of Atlanta recognizes neighborhood associations that charge monetary dues, financial dollars, specific money for people to be able to vote or hold office. I've submitted an email over from my own neighborhood association that says, remember to pay your dues. Dues are required. In other words, if I don't pay money, I'm not allowed to vote or hold an official position at my neighborhood association. And I have been witness to the neighborhood associations being usurped by new residents who are of higher income, who have ties to real estate, who are either developers or flippers or even agents, using these positions of authority, telling legacy residents who have been there for 30 to 40 years, raise your hand if you're a dues paying member. And when the senior woman does not have the money to pay for her right to vote in her own neighborhood association that she lives in, she is not included. And that is why they have less than 20%, although their numbers are growing, because they have had a strategy and it has been very effective. And that strategy has been to get City of Atlanta elected officials who sit on city council, who remain highly influential to date, to fund for-profit tours through divested neighborhoods, through Pittsburgh, through Sylvan Hills, through Capitol View, through Venetian Hills, through Cascade, tour after tour after tour, and you will see visuals there. And when you unleash the power of money that these people brought from the north side, from outside of Atlanta, using SEO, search engine optimization, which the Beltline was complicit in, and we'll get there, that literally created an entire exodus of legacy residents who had to disperse from Southwest Atlanta in a flood of evictions, foreclosures, loss of generational wealth, title liens, and City of Atlanta was involved due to the problematic NPU structure that recognizes those neighborhood associations as the official voice, even though their data is insufficient. And that information goes to the NPU, and the NPU is not properly regulated, which is why a chair of the NPU couldn't even present findings at the NPU, which occurred in front of President Felicia Moore. and why we had to release that vision outside of the NPU in a public library, which occurred in front of Andre Dickens. And to date, the lack of action.
Let's let them respond, Robbie. Let's let them respond to that.
Sure.
To those.
Sure.
Well, I'll start with the response, and I certainly know Ms. Caban's concerns and her.
Feel free to call me
Robbie's concerns and years long to get the NPU to listen to and hear the presentation. And again, each NPU around the city is governed by their own set of bylaws and their own set of actions. And while there may be strong neighborhood groups, the official voice is the NPU, which is a collective of all the neighborhoods in the group. So that's one thing. Secondly, dealing with the council member, if there are some issues dealing with the council member, that may also, as she said, she felt as it was a block. If that was the case, then that's something that makes it a bit more difficult. If that's what the NPU is going in. Now, from what I understand, that's what the NPU wanted to do. I can't speak for the council member or not, but, being able to present the plan, I think that they should have listened to it. That would have been my recommendation. But if they don't, the NPU as a body has a determination or should determine what they will hear and what they won't hear. But neither here nor there, the plan itself, there may be elements of it that could be implemented through other means. So I understand what she's saying. The thing with the NPU system that I found, because I was an NPU chair and I've come out of the system, it is become institutionalized and is very reticent for change because each NPU has its own culture and they do not like nor want to make substantive or changes that make it sort of cookie cutter across the city. And so that's also an issue, how do we reform it? How do we make it different or better? Makes it difficult because most NPUs operate the way they operate and they prefer to operate the way they operate. And council members are caught in the middle if in fact somebody tries to make those changes. And those things have come up over the years and they have been bloody fights.
Yeah. So I want to say a few things. Robbie is right on just about everything she said, explaining what has occurred, some of those unfortunate issues, particularly in the NPUs that she lived in and serves in. The NPU system is flawed, and it didn't start off that way. So it's either for us to make a decision, us meaning not just city council. I believe that these are collective decisions. I believe these are decisions that citizens and public officials make together. There was a time when I was a neighborhood president and an NPU rep. Now I'm a city council person. And a few risings and settings of the sun, you will see me back as an NPU representative and a neighborhood person. I won't be doing city council forever. I believe that we all serve together, all of us. So I think that any system has to be tweaked and some systems have to be repaired. And so I don't think you scrap the NPU system. I think you fix it. One of the challenges with it that makes it, as council members, as council president said, I mean, I'm citywide. I've been, a citywide official the whole time I've been the last 7 years. So I go to NPUs in Buckhead, Cascade, Grant Park, West End, Metropolitan. I mean, I go to every NPU all over the place, and they operate differently. Some NPUs meet for an hour and 15 minutes. Some NPUs meet for 3 hours. Some NPUs have all these presentations from some NPUs give you council members 2 minutes to speak. Some NPUs let council members go on for days. Some NPUs have every kind of law enforcement speak and every kind of this and that before you even get to the legislative items. Some NPUs really they have committees that see stuff ahead of time. The land use committee, the transportation committee, the public safety committee, and then those committees give recommendations. So some of us say, let's unify or what should I say, normalize or structural, make every NPU operate the same. This is your agenda. This is what you talk about. This is how you vote. You got to be a member of good standing, having attended 2 NPU meetings, or you have to be a member that has lived in the community a certain amount of years. All these things, each NPU makes decisions. You go to some NPUs, they're holding up paddles saying, they give you a paddle to vote if you've been a member, if you've attended 2 or 3 meetings. Some NPUs are like, hey, you show up that day, you vote, and we don't even know if you still live at that house anymore. Some NPUs allow business owners to vote. If you own the McDonald's in that neighborhood, you can vote. If you own the Ace Hardware in that neighborhood, you can vote. So it is different. And so the questions that we're having, the organizations that are saying, let's reform the NPUs, these are like up and down for debate. To structurally redo the NPUs to make them the same, or to allow them to have these nuances and differences based on cultural differences and land use differences in certain areas. So all that's to say, yes, it's flawed. I don't think you scrap it. I think we figure out how to toughen it. But they do vote on a president, a chairperson, all these things, and that person has the power. City council doesn't get in the middle of that. We go to the meetings and we are yes, sir, no, ma'am.
I'd like to, when I have a moment, respond to
I'll
the city
council. I'll give you your moment, and I'll hush.
Hold on.
Huh?
Can I
Whenever.
let Donovan jump in? Because he was waiting for a second. So
Let me just finish what I was going to say. Going back to one thing, gentrification. Gentrification is real. It's horrible. It's something that we have to, to fix, to eliminate. And the NPUs have a way in that. City council has a way in that. And just the average individual citizen and realtors all are complicit. Everybody's got input into that. And that's a whole nother conversation. When you asked me earlier about community benefits agreement, and then we jumped over to NPUs, these are literally not 5-second discussions. These are years in the making of decisions about how to stop gentrification, how to get a community benefits agreement in a state like Georgia that is a land rights state that does not allow you to make certain agreements happen. You can't force a landowner to do certain things in Georgia. It's complicated. And I think to make the complication come to light so that we can make decisions and not just say we don't like certain things, but to really talk about the facts on the ground would be very beneficial.
Donovan, jump in.
So I just wanted to I guess kind of touch on some of these points. We kind of circled back around to some of these here. The first thing is that I have attended many NPUs, both as a chair, and I interned with the city of Atlanta for a period of time in the planning department and stuff as well. And so one of the things that I wanted to ask, and I guess pose this question, is I'm very familiar with CBAs, community benefits agreements, all of those things, memorandums, understanding, all of those different devices. But I guess my question is more so, when you look at an area, historic districts have rules and regulations about what can be done in an area based upon the historic designation given. Short of having a historic designation for an area, what can be done as far as making sure that developers are following an LCI? So I can talk about particular developments, but I will attempt to keep it vague, just in the interest of some of the things that are going on right now. But if you have an LCI for an area or for a community, and we are constantly getting developers in that are not adhering to the desires of the community voted on by the LCI, what are mechanisms that can be put in place to say, hey, we
What's the
don't want...
LPI? I'm sorry, for the layman's, I'm sorry. What's the LPI?
I think it's Living Community Initiative. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Livable Community Initiative.
Yes.
Livable Cities Edition.
Community city. Yes.
Yeah, and typically the LCIs are a planning document, and it goes to the Atlanta Regional Commission, and it has funding, typically streetscape improvements, transportation improvements. And so I don't know how a developer couldn't follow that LCI without it being formally amended.
Right. So my question is: there any way to regulate the types of development that are coming forth that don't adhere to the LCI?
Well, the LCI doesn't do the zoning designations. It's more of a transportation related effort. So it doesn't dictate what type of development can or cannot be somewhere. So that's a whole nother type of plan. That would be a special public interest district or a zoning designation or that kind of thing. So the LCI wouldn't dictate what can and cannot be somewhere other than the fact of how it would impact that particular traffic or whatever.
Yeah, so one of the LCI that I'm referring to in particular, there was saying that, hey, we want, much like Atlantic Station has residential on top, commercial on the bottom, we want those type of developments to come into this area. And now we're seeing developments that are, we have 5 senior facilities that are all coming into this area. So this is not what was envisioned for the community, by the community.
I think that LCI should have been mirrored or matched with an overlay or a special public interest district that changed the zoning that required that to be a part of it. Like on Hollowell Parkway, we did a plan on Hollowell Parkway on what we wanted to see, and then we followed that plan up with actual changes of zoning designation. So when new development came in, they had to either fit what we already said we wanted, or they would have had to start back through the process to get approval to do something different. And I think that may be what you're missing.
Okay, so if it's a specific type of versus we want, well, okay, I can see what you're saying there.
Robbie, did you want to finish up?
I just wanted to respond I will quickly. So very quickly, when you look at the NPU pages, they literally state government organizations. So I understand that there might be some variation, but what I particularly witnessed was some type of inappropriate involvement among council with NPU representatives, where council was calling special meetings to request funding, and there seems to be on a micro level some type of controlling of resources via the NPU that no one is able to really decipher or investigate, because planning, who's in charge of the NPU, does not require the NPU goes live, does not require public pages. Hence, you'll see secret pages that have affiliations with real estate. I submitted an example of one. There are many. Hence, you'll see neighborhood leadership using private emails. So we can't keep track of whatever's happening in these discussions. I personally know of meetings that have been called for resources regarding murals. Now, how does that work to campaigns? Well, someone will get funding from the Art Foundation from Atlanta, and then that will become part of their campaign. The artist will be hand selected. It won't be made public. And literally that is how this district person will stay in power. There are a multitude of examples out of this. That being said, if the NPU is an arm of the government and it should be under the purview of planning, then that means Tim Keene would be responsible for it, the commissioner of planning, and that means that he answers to Mayor Bottoms. And Mayor Bottoms has been notified of the problems in our NPU, and the cost of the lack of consistency and lack of transparency is very expensive, not only to legacy residents who pay the worst price, but to Atlanta as a whole. Because when we squander our funds and literally invite people to pillage real estate in communities, which is what has occurred, and I want to say Andre mentioned realtors, I would agree with him. I'm not one of them, but it doesn't matter because there are 1,000 other realtors who will behave in that fashion. That being said, now we, City of Atlanta taxpayers, have to find a way to supplement the money to keep people in some type of affordability for themselves so they can have some type of dignity in their homes. That's why we have a $50 million bond for affordable housing that we are borrowing to. We are borrowing to keep affordability in the city of Atlanta, when who really caused the affordability problem? The prices in Southwest Atlanta, and I'm speaking as an agent right now, a licensed agent, I believe.
I think you froze,
Councilwoman
Robin.
Moore is home. I'm sorry, am I here?
Yeah, you froze for about
You froze
10
now.
seconds.
Okay. Well, who?
Yes,
who,
I am also a licensed agent.
So what caused those prices to go up in Southwest Atlanta? Was it the Beltline tours? Because that's federally funded. Was it the Beltline billboards that allowed people to use the Beltline trademark? Because that was inequitable. Was it the Invest Atlanta tours that we funded as taxpayers and didn't warn residents about because we have a broken NPU system? Yeah, maybe it was a culmination of all of those things that we subsidized private developers, private LLCs, private flippers, private wholesalers, cost people their generational wealth, legacy residents, the very legacy residents that afforded the Beltline because people wanted to live here. So now we're going to pay for what? Doesn't that sound like bad planning? Doesn't that sound like inaction on the part of our elected officials? This is not to sit here and point a finger and blame, but how on earth do we figure out how to solve this if we won't even have the conversation of what actually occurred?
Well, let me just throw my 2 cents in, and I'm not going to discount that any of the actions that you've mentioned, Robbie, have contributed to the problems that we have. But I don't think that the NPU system in and of itself is the cause or any of those one specific things, because if that was the case, it would only be happening in Atlanta and not happening across the country. Housing affordability is a big issue everywhere, and I talk to my colleagues across the country. So this is not even just that, it's also just the market. And we understand the market dictates a lot of things. I do think there's a lot that the city was negligent in doing and has been negligent in doing that could have starved it off. So I'm not discounting what you say, but I don't think that in and of itself it's all from the NPU system. Whether we had
So how is the city? I'm sorry. So how is the city solving what the city hasn't done or has done thus far to create this problem? I'm sorry. Is there a big background noise?
Somebody has another source up or something. So try it again.
So I understand that you feel like this is a national issue, and I wouldn't discount that, although the increase in Atlanta is significant above national average. And we do have certain things that, oh, there's a message here. We do have certain things where people should be flourishing in Atlanta due to the type of development, but instead our legacy residents are actually receiving the brunt or the worst practices. So I guess what I would want to know as a resident who pays taxes, who is not complicit as an agent because I have refrained altogether from any activity to my own business's detriment that would engage in such activity that would damage residents, what is our city doing now to curtail the lack of action, the inaction, or the actual problematic action? Because I haven't seen that at all.
So can you mind if I chime in? I see some other people look like they want to communicate. What this sounds like it's turned into is anyway, what this sounds like is let's do what we do well, which is point fingers and put things. And I'm not saying this to you, Robbie. I'm saying this to just about most of the meetings since Zoom has been the thing we've been doing lately is let's point out the problems of the city. And we got plenty of them. You talked about your district very well. There's a remedy for that. And we all know what that remedy is. If you think that if that's the way you want to go regarding whoever represents you, then that's how you deal with that. You mentioned certain things about certain people doing tours, certain people doing certain things. If you disagree with that, then you show up at a certain time, at a certain place for that. Hold on a second. Hey, Bailey, I'm on a Zoom, on a call. You cooking over there. It's my daughter. So,
Where is the certain place and where do people show up? What does that mean? Because I've gone through ethics and I tried to go to the NPU and they wouldn't even know. Okay.
What I'm sharing is you've talked about a specific elected official without saying their names. You've done that a number of times.
Councilwoman Shepherd, District 12.
Right. So there's a remedy.
So what do I? Okay, what is it?
Every 4 years, I get one. Council member Shepherd gets one. Council President Moore gets one. It's called an opportunity to run again or not run again. You deal with that how you see fit, right? So, and if it's unethical, you deal with that by filing an ethics complaint on whoever you think has done something unethical. But as it relates,
I filed an ethics complaint, and we have 3 at-larges. You're one of them.
I am
Fiscally responsible to the entire city. Knowing what's occurring. Yes, with documentation that was never investigated. You literally sat at a release of an economic development plan and vision. Kwanzaa Hall was there, Mary Norwood was there, Jason Estevez was there, Ishay Collins was there. To your credit, you told me, make sure you acknowledge Ishay. Okay, we finished an entire plan. It was obstructed at the NPU level. I have filed ethics complaints. The consequences of that holistic plan not going anywhere has resulted in catastrophic conditions for our legacy residents. Half of Oakland City is gone. Every one of my neighbors that were around me has been foreclosed on, dispossessed, lost generational wealth. We still have no economical vitality on Metropolitan Parkway. There is an entire moratorium on Hollowell. And that's one example of a huge, I'm not sitting here pointing fingers because that doesn't matter. But the bottom line is we have a problem at the NPU. And to your credit, you're here discussing it. And to Felicia Moore's credit, she's here discussing it. And to ADOS's credit, they put this online. So let's get real about it. Let's get real about it because an 8-year-old died less than a mile from my house when the police wouldn't even show up to guard peaceful protesters because they were armed, because they were Black. That happened in my district. But nothing's going to happen to Councilperson Shepherd because she is part of a nod squad. Because our mayor needs 8 votes to get things passed at council. I have submitted this. I've gone on camera about it. I have told Mayor Bottoms that I would meet about it as a whistleblower. I have risked my license. Okay, we have had multiple deaths, even our smaller initiatives. The ATV park, you sat in my home with those ATV riders who came to, you know, the bravery it took for them to come to my home? Those cats didn't know me from a can of paint. The ATV riders, those young men showed up at my house wanting to have dialogue. They came because you were here. You were at my home. You were willing to have a conversation. That initiative never happened, even though it went through the NPU. Who is that? I'm sorry. I think the screen froze.
No, let me jump in. Aside from voting whoever out, what else can we do? Aside from that, I feel like as a community, organizations, politicians, public servants, just concerned citizens, we can all get together, coalesce, and come up with one agenda. Let's sit down at the table, come up with an anti-displacement plan, and work it together. Why couldn't we do that?
The 3 at-larges have the authority to do that.
You said what? You don't have authority?
No, I said the 3 at-larges are 3 at-large council people. You would be one of them, Matt Westmoreland, Michael Bonds. None of you individually would have to take the hit, but you all have the authority to speak for the city at large. And I, for one, as a taxpayer, business owner, and someone who ran through this system and knows what occurred, who has the data to prove that it is in need of bad reform, I would love to be part of that process. I agree with the gentleman. I think that's a great idea. And I think our folks who are sitting in authority, you included, I wish Councilperson or President Moore would support the effort, could come together and say, you know what, yeah, we represent the city as a whole. The North Side may be paying ungodly taxes. The South Side's about to pay ungodly taxes. For what? for mistakes that could be avoided, for literally
Shamika,
initiatives that never.
go ahead.
Sorry,
I'm sorry, Robbie. We're gonna let Shamika speak.
please. Apologies.
Oh, no, no problem, Robbie. The question I wanted to ask Ms. Moore is, she mentioned that basically there are some things that could have been done differently. I would love to know those things, like not in full detail, but I mean, to see the gentrification go from 0 to 100 in the manner that it has, you know, like, I would just like to know what could have been done differently to for it not to be on overdrive in the way that it is.
Specific thing, and I've been president for 3 years, but I represented District 9 for 20 years. And one thing that I understand is we want to see the communities that are underserved. We want to see them better. The people there want to have a grocery store to go to. They want to have the amenities that they see in other places. So that's one thing. So you try to, as a council member, make sure that you can provide what your citizens want. But on the other hand, when things start to get better, other people start to look at that. And so what I always recognize is that every neighborhood, most neighborhoods, I'm going to put it that way, have what's called a life cycle. And the continuum of that life cycle is, at some point, it's a great one when the houses are new and built, it goes through cycles. And at the end of that cycle, you have a dilapidated neighborhood. And I ran into an area that I represented that had great neighborhoods and dilapidated neighborhoods. In the north side, those neighborhoods' life cycle is real long because they haven't ever gotten to the dilapidated state. So one thing that I found is to manage that, is to stabilize the communities as they are. And so that means a lot of on the ground work. You're going to ask something? I'm sorry. That's a lot of on the ground.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, can we talk about that stabilization? Can we speak on stabilization?
That starts off with code enforcement, but code enforcement with a heart, meaning when we found homes that were dilapidated, finding out actually who owned that home. Is it some out-of-town owner, or is it an old person that needed help? There were some times when we had to solicit our resources in the community to help the person clean up the property. There were other times that we had to go and force to get go to the court and get the courts to do something, doing cleanups to make people feel better about the community, providing home improvements. We did a lot of that in my neighborhoods where we went in where seniors and others who couldn't afford it, put roofs on houses, painted houses, brought organizations in to be able to do that, to help stabilize and help a legacy resident, someone who's lived there 30, 40 years, to be able to live there longer and to be able to prosper there longer. So that is something. So I think it starts with stabilizing the communities you have, because the market is like the weather. We can't control whether it's going to storm or whatever's going to happen, but we can try to hedge against that. And I think first and foremost, one of the things that we have not done in Atlanta, and we still don't do a great job of it, is stabilizing the neighborhood so that people can have a longer period of time that they can stay in their homes and to be able to prosper from that. They're living in a community that's continuing to deteriorate, which only brings in predators. Vultures swarm around carcasses, and a lot of our communities are carcasses. And to keep those vultures away, you've got to keep some life into the communities as they are.
Can I chime in? And what I want to say is that the best way to have these conversations, you can have the most heated conversation, you can score a lot of points, but the best way to do this is to talk through specifics. We can say, fire somebody, that's fine. We can say somebody did something wrong 6 years ago, 3 years ago. We can do that all day. Do you know that people do that for a living now? shoot down stuff. What I'd like to say is clearly a few things. Clearly, when the Beltline was planned, they should have had a community benefits agreement around it, and what was called inclusionary zoning, which is a requirement that affordability is in every development that comes up. That didn't come along until like 7 years. No, actually, like 8 years into the Beltline. So you lost tremendous ground. So we could point at a bunch of people in the past, but what does that do, right? I don't feel the need to do that. We talk about where we are now. So I'm a lifelong Atlantan. A lot of echo. Born and raised here. My goal is to make sure that legacy residents don't get displaced, and that as we grow, we have balanced growth in this city. Some people.
Can I speak to the legacy? I'm sorry. Go ahead. My bad.
So legacy residents, how do you preserve legacy residents? Meaning people that are already in their homes. They've been there for 30, 40, 50 years, like most of my family, in areas where people are trying to take over and move in. That's a market force. We got to fight market forces, but that's the hardest thing to fight, and we're trying to do that. Do you know that I took money from the east side trail of the Beltline, put it on 30 roofs and HVAC units and windows for senior citizens on the west side of the Beltline? Literally had to stop predators from going to Mrs. Jones's house, Mr. White's house, and buying their house right from under them, not under them, from them, because they had a roof that was caved in, and seniors just don't have $20,000 or $15,000 to fix a roof. And so when somebody comes to you and say, I'll buy your house for $150,000, you're like, yay, but then they put it back on the market after some renovations for $300,000. That's gentrification. Absolutely. It's horrible. It's literally tearing at the fabric of the community, not just economically, but culturally. As an Atlantan, being born and raised here, I can tell you it's tearing up the culture, tearing up the economy. But at the same time, we talk about affordable housing. There's a housing solution, but there's also affordable. Affordable means income. Affordable means what you can pay. And we have had in Atlanta, just like I see a brother in the comments talking about Philly, Felicia goes to so many League of Cities meetings all across the nation. Everybody's talking about this, and there's somebody saying you're doing it wrong. But in Atlanta, we only had a 10% increase in income, whereas we had a 50% increase in housing in Metro Atlanta. So I remember when I was running for city council in 2013, telling people we need to do stuff about affordable housing. There were folks in the areas that Robbie's talking about in NPU X and NPU Z and NPU R that were saying, we don't need no more affordable housing. We got all the affordable housing we can stand. We don't need no more affordable housing. And I said, give it, take it a little while, but what's affordable today will not be affordable tomorrow, because incomes are not going up for the average person, but they're going up for all these implants, these people that's coming in. And so what happens is now, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years later, folks are saying, we need to have something to stabilize our communities. We need affordable housing. The vision is short-sighted in some of these cases. And so I just wanted to highlight that there's not enough time for this discussion. We need to break it down. And I'm committed to having this conversation with each time you want to have it. Let's break them down into corridors. Are we talking about this area preserving affordability? Let's tackle it. In this area, we're talking about legacy residents. Let's tackle it. But the conversation about NPUs and about community, these things are going to be hard to do in 5 minutes, especially with,
I think this is a good time. Maybe it's up to you, Ray. We can segue into talking about, reparations, because we keep on trying to come up with solutions, affordable housing, and all this. How about we fight for reparations? That way, ADOS, African Americans, get the money they are owed, and we are able, as the market grows, and maybe we are able to afford to live in these, in our city. Give us our money that was taken from us over hundreds of years, so we will be able to afford to live.
Right. So as Ms. Moore mentioned,
I'm with that, Larry. But before we segue to reparations, let's talk about some specifics. Andre mentioned specifics of things that could help. And I feel like if we had the political will and the will from the community, it's not just y'all. I feel like everybody needs to come together. But if we came together as a coalition and brought solutions to the table and stood as a unified front and trying to solve the issues of displacement, we would gain some ground. So let me run a couple things by y'all. Why aren't there any Black businesses on the Beltline? We should make sure that there are Black businesses on the Beltline. You got White Street in the West End right there. You got all those breweries. All those breweries, they don't represent the community. They don't even have the character of the community, but they were able, and I know this is what we call a free market, but why aren't there any, like you have Little Vietnams or Little Mexico or Buford Highway? You can go up Buford Highway. They have their own grocery stores and everything. We need our own stuff because we are a marginalized group. So we need to have these. Yeah. We need to have nothing but Black. We need to have Black storefronts, Black neighborhoods where we do Black business.
I disagree that we can't afford it. Somebody says we can't afford it. I can tell you that we can afford a number of things. We stick together. I'm not sure we lack anything person. I believe in us so much that I don't believe we lack a thing. I know that right there on Martin Luther King, you got a Zaxby's owned by a Black man, you got a Chick-fil-A owned by a Black man, you got I'm sitting up here thinking of all the Mr. Everything. You got Mims. You got right there. You got. So I believe that if you, me, you want to open up a business where we want to open it, we open it. We put our money together. We go to the bank. We do what we need to do. There's challenges, of course, but I'm not fully buying into the we can't have a business on the Beltline. There's no. That's just not the case. I want
Andre. It has to be areas specifically set aside for us on the Beltline.
Oh no, there's nothing set aside for a Black. You mean like, hey, this is Black area? No, that's not.
Yes.
We don't have that. Okay.
You know,
why not?
May I interject, please?
Go ahead.
To your point and to Andre's point, I think Andre has a business background, and when he has a vision, I respect that. But you are right when you are stating that the businesses on Lee Street are not representative, nor are they Black owned. And could there have been an opportunity? Yes, but it goes right back to the structure of our civic engagement system, because those businesses were sold off of those tours that the community collective were not warned about. That the neighborhood associations, to your question, what can be done now? Those monetary dues that neighborhood associations, that the data comes in from the very bottom rung and trickles to the NPU, to Atlanta APAB, to Atlanta Council, to the mayor's seat for funding can be modified. City of Atlanta right now, any at-large, any regular non-at-large can submit legislation to say City of Atlanta should not recognize a modern day poll tax because it is damaging to the community collective and the data that goes into City of Atlanta. And the consequences are catastrophic for not only legacy residents who receive the worst, but for Atlanta taxpayers. And we do happen to have a parkway that doesn't have a full moratorium. We have Metropolitan Parkway. It connects the world's busiest airport to downtown. And though that land is much more expensive now than it was 4 years ago, when we pitched that comprehensive plan that took a year to do, that land is still viable. And it is mixed use, and it can create a ton of jobs and a ton of affordable housing. And why that's not being done is beyond, because it could be.
So let me just add one other suggestion, because you talked earlier about a community collective. And what
Yes.
that can formulate into is to those who are Black, if that's what they want to do, to pull themselves together and either form a community development corporation. If you don't do a community development corporation, come together, bring your together with the LLC, because if you control the land, you can control what they do. I mean,
But
so we can be a
Felicia,
part,
it's too
we can be
late. Who controls the land right now? And why? Who brought all these people in on buses? They even came in on bikes. There's
I'm not talking
photographs
about,
of it.
I got that point, but what I'm saying to you is from this day forward, he would.
But the land is bought. The land is bought, and people are.
If the land was all gone, we wouldn't be having this discussion. I think we're having this discussion because we were talking about how do we preserve areas for legacy residents, and how do we create an area or a section where Black businesses can be together and thrive.
But why wouldn't that be a public partnership? If the city was complicit in causing outsiders to come in and buy up these properties, whether it was on the internet, if the Beltline was complicit, allowing their trademark to be used in illegal trademark names, including huge billboards on the West Side that went all over the country, that invited outsiders with more income to buy up everywhere, including busloads of people who literally got booklets on how to buy tax liens. Why today
I
should
hear
it
you, Robbie. I'm not talking about what has happened.
but the consequences of what you're saying today that people should now pull their money. Why, if the city was complicit, should it be a public-private partnership?
No. Hold on. Wait. We're gonna talk one at a time. We're gonna have a conversation. Felicia, you have the floor.
Thank you. I was just trying to offer what I was asked earlier, what can be done. And I do think that there is plenty of opportunity for collective, like-minded people to come together. Again, like I said, either develop a community development corporation, come together, develop an LLC, and go out and purchase this property and create what you want to see in your community. And I think a lot of times we are reacting to what other people are doing when we can also do that ourselves. And there are plenty of Black people that are doing that.
Yeah, I would
Miss Moore. We need politics, though.
300
have politics.
restaurants. I literally put together 300 Black restaurants. You can pull them up. 300 Black restaurants in Atlanta. You can go to my Facebook, my Instagram. I pulled these together so that we would shop Black. I started a Black furniture business in Atlanta for 10 years. And Black law firms.
We understand what you're saying.
I'm not trying to say that there's not a problem. I just think that we have to, it's hard to have a nuanced conversation when everybody wants to say, we lack this, we ain't got enough money, we don't have.
Andre, I know you, and I know Miss Moore. I know y'all know the data, especially in the city of Atlanta, the income and the wealth.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So where is this money y'all talking about for African Americans? You know the income divide, and you know the wealth.
Absolutely.
The wealth gap and the income gap. So where is this money?
Right, but
what y'all talking about?
So here's where we're talking right now. I literally just said there are 300 Black restaurants, and what you went to was the ugly side of Atlanta, the problem that we have, which is income immobility, income inequality. It's horrible. We got to fix it. But I can't just make us throw tit for tat and argue points. You asked me why we can't have a Black business on the Beltline. I got 300 Black businesses in Atlanta. If we can't stick to one point because we just want to jump to negatives, that's just all we're doing is winning points and making us all feel less like we can't. So if we just want to focus on income inequality and income mobility, fine. We can all just talk about what we ain't got. But I'm gonna promise you, at some point, we're gonna have to talk about the fact of how we already got certain things and how we need to grow the good things we already have. And I think it's a fair conversation that we can talk about both of them. We are the worst in income mobility. A person in poverty in Atlanta has only a 4% chance of making it to the upper class. That's horrible. And what we're trying to do, I'm training people on how to get out of that. That's what I'm trying to do.
Whoa. Training people. Whoa. We need
technology training, vocational training.
Whoa, we need our government. We need comprehensive policy. Redistribution. That's what we need. We can't do it ourselves. We don't try that. I mean, I ain't saying what you're doing. What you're doing is cool, but on top of that, along with that, we need a comprehensive plan.
All right.
We need a political, social, and economic effort. So our people, African Americans, can strive. That's what we need.
All right.
I mean, why can't there be a public-private partnership on the development of metropolitan, partly a regional plan? Why can't the city enforce that the neighborhood associations not collect monetary dues for residents who live there? They don't have to pay extra money to have a voice or hold office. Why can't the NPU system require that chairs use non-private emails, go live at every meeting, and have public pages and public groups, not share in private groups? Why can't the city require the NPU officials sign a document so that they will disclose any conflicts of interest, and there will be repercussions that they will pay their own legal fees if they violate those conflicts? Why is that so hard? Why can't our ethics department have some teeth in it and actually investigate, which they do not? Why can't our at-larges create a coalition and say, I will stand up for the city as a whole. None of us have to take the hit as a whole individually. We can do it together, and we will have comprehensive holistic development on the Southwest quadrant to stabilize the South Side.
I love it. That's great.
Can you lead it? Because you have the authority. I don't.
Let's go. Let's do it.
What do you need?
Okay, so can we agree?
Let's go.
Can we agree?
We need a meeting. not a yelling match, not a
That's what I'm saying.
Not what not what an old council or somebody else did to somebody in the past.
She's still
straight up. Let's plan it out now. Somebody said I'm against reparations. I mean,
okay.
I'm looking at this craziness.
So Andre,
reparations.
So Andre,
people just saying we gotta have real conversations.
Andre, hear me out. Hear me out.
Yeah.
Let's have a meeting in January. Let's bring together organizations, NPUs, and concerned citizens and business owners, and let's work on an anti-displacement coalition, and let's come with solutions. Let's all bring solutions to the table, and we chop it up. What do you say?
That sounds fantastic.
Can the meeting be?
You don't sound enthused.
Well, I just think that I asked you earlier when we was coming on this meeting. You said I want to talk about everything in the world, and I'm like, it's hard to balance it all, but man,
we didn't get to everything.
Hey, bro, I'm down for it, man. I love my people so much. I love this city so much. I mean, I'm even in, I'm seeing folks say stuff. Hey, man, I'm whatever the case may be. I'm here. Robbie even said, "Hey, Andre, I couldn't go to that meeting, so Andre came to this meeting." You're right. I'm gonna come to whatever you ask me to come to, Robbie. I'm gonna come to whatever you ask me to come to, Ray. I'm gonna make policies based on what you tell me. I just want to make sure that we don't always put our hands in our pockets and say we ain't got and we can't do.
Andre,
we crazy.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying what you say. I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. I'm just saying we can't have only that. We gotta have policy. We gotta have policy too. That's what I'm saying.
All right, I'm with that.
And those policies
have much. I mean, everything from. If I gave you my background, I tell you that I believe on the upside.
Right, and whatever policies that are put in place, they have to be enforced, because what's the point? If nothing's being enforced, we're just doing it for it's and giggles,
Councilwoman Moore, would you come to this meeting? Is it possible this meeting could maybe be a little earlier because of this runoff? And would y'all approach the other at-larges and city council to be part of this potential collaborative?
I will. I mean, if my schedule permits, I will. I'm asked to be on a lot of panels. I can't promise that I'll be on the next one, but if my schedule permits, I will.
We'll work around your schedule. But I love to have you there at the end of the day because this is important. Pre-COVID, the numbers were by 2053, Blacks are slated to have no wealth in the country. And that was pre-COVID. So just imagine how that's sped up now. So it's a lot we didn't get into tonight. I appreciate the conversation. I want to respect everybody's time. Closing thoughts, please.
My closing thought is just that to add again, I'm more as trying to regurgitate what happened, and how we fix it. And I'm glad, that some of that has come out. None of this is perfect, but I do think that we have to start from where we are, and that collective vision, particularly when it deals with this real estate. Because while we're sitting here talking, other people are out buying property and purchasing property. There are Black people that are doing these things, and there are others that can do the same thing in the same space. So if affordable housing is the issue, or whatever the issue is, collectively people can get together to do it. And it doesn't always have to. Public-private partnerships are good things, but it doesn't always have to be in partnership with the government. Sometimes you don't have to wait on the government to get things done.
Ray, I know we in the closing. Can I mention something real quick?
Please.
Yeah, earlier this summer, I don't know if you heard, Asheville, North Carolina, they approved. They called it reparations. We ADOS don't like to call everything reparations, but what they did do, they invited community community groups and local governments to join. Sorry. They created a commission, and what they're going to do is come up with a plan to let's see here. It says increasing minority home ownership, access to affordable housing, increasing minority business ownership and career opportunity strategy, and grow equity and generational wealth. ADOS don't like the word minority because minority has come very, very inclusive these days. But is that something the city of Atlanta can do? We keep on talking about buying property. Can the mayor come up with a commission? We already know the data for African Americans' wealth and income in Atlanta. Can we come up with a commission to study and come up with something to close that Black-white wealth gap in the city of Atlanta? Is that something that's possible?
Everything is possible. Coming together and studying is something that the city is good at doing. The thing is the execution and implementation. I think there are a lot of things that we can be doing to do that. But yeah, I mean, everything's possible.
And this one here is from Durham, North Carolina. It's much easier than what I just said. All right, Durham, this was earlier this year too. Their leaders came together for a program. They called for a support and national reparations for the American descendants of slavery. So this is just something they came up with a resolution just in support of federal reparations for the descendants of slavery in America.
Hey, Larry, hold on.
Larry. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Let me let Andre. I know you time sensitive. did you want to close out?
Oh, my bad. I didn't know.
Please don't say I'm time sensitive because they're gonna say we ain't got time for them. Even though we've been working since what time, Felicia? 7 this morning. No, I have nothing. I'm listening. I'm active. I'm here. Let's meet again. Let's do it. That's my answer. Period. Let's go.
I just wanted to I just want to say real quick. I think our Black politicians across the country, we should be more vocal about reparations. That's it. We coming up with all these plans, and we need reparations so we can just go out there and buy that land, stay in our house, and buy that house. That's what we need. And I wish y'all would be, more of our Black politicians would be more vocal about that. That's all I had to say.
Okay. Shamika, Robbie? Well,
I don't have much left because you guys really, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Robbie.
I want to apologize if I made anyone uncomfortable. My intent was not to make anyone uncomfortable or to point fingers. I just don't see how we can get to real solutions, and people are really hurting if we don't realistically look at how we got here. The gentrification in Atlanta is not only due to market forces. I'm in real estate. I understand what's happening nationally, but we instituted as a city a series of actions and then took non-action through our civic engagement system, whether that was the implementation of Mercedes-Benz city funded, Porsche city funded, Turner Field city funded, no benefits agreements whatsoever. Even Tyler Perry to some degree was city funded. The wall is still up and the residents around those locations are not being hired. That is the problem because you cannot buy a home without a job, without credit. We knew the conditions that these divested areas were in. So to sit here and say, well, go ahead and do a community collective and get it done yourself, that's not reasonable because it didn't happen by itself. It happened through our city and through our city engagement process. And to Andre's credit, to Felicia's credit, thank goodness you're here. Thank goodness ADOS put this on. But we have a strategic moment right now. The Democrats are here in Georgia, wanting Georgia for a reason. That is a huge industry. It's huge money. They want those 2 seats. There's a reason they funded Warnock. There's a reason they funded Ossoff. And we need Warnock and Ossoff to stand up right now for reparations before January 5th. And they can do it. Reverend Warnock is sitting in the pulpit of Reverend King, the beloved Reverend King, who literally went for the people's agenda, the poor people's agenda, to his death. There's nothing else that is equatable to reparations. And their Democratic Party will not tell Raphael Warnock no right now. So that is our strategy in. And I sit here not as a Black person, but I do have Puerto Rican ancestry. I do pay taxes as well. It does hurt me when my neighbors who are predominantly Black suffer. And Puerto Rico's on a strategy too. And when they come for Puerto Rico, I want those folks, my folks, to get reparations. So I have no reason to not back y'all, because what's going to happen to us if y'all don't get it? Thanks for having me on here.
Thank you. Thank you. Brother Donovan, please.
Yeah, I just want to say that I really appreciate the dialogue tonight. I just want to say that it's really important to continue to have conversations like this. I think that it is imperative for us to hold our elected officials accountable. While I do appreciate, looking at the bright side of things and all the things that are working, we have to acknowledge the things that are not working and make sure that we are really staying on how to fix those issues. I think that there are a lot of flaws within the NPU system, certainly with engagement. And while I do think it's great to, shout out and clap at the successes, we need to make sure that we are addressing these issues, because they're not individual issues. There aren't small problems here and there, but there are actually systemic issues that need to be addressed.
And I would just add it, that perhaps, you know, when you do it, if you kind of decide what you want to speak about, and if the NPU is the issue, then you should also include other council members. I mean, Andre and I are two. Well, I'm not a council member anymore. Andre's the only council member you have, but there are 15 members of council. So maybe you do this same discussion, but you invite other council members so that you can get a circular conversation with more than just us two.
Yeah, most definitely. I just want to thank everybody for coming on, y'all. This was a great conversation. You all didn't even have to show up, so that alone is greatly appreciated. I feel like, yes, there are some people in Atlanta, some ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery / Black, whatever you want to call it, African American, that do have some money. They got some change. You know, it is some Black folks with some money, but that doesn't mean that we don't need politics. We have to engage in the political process, and we have to bring everything together. So, yes, we do need to be about our business, but we also need to be about policy as well. So we are going to have this conversation again, and we need to be solutions oriented on how we can stop displacement and how we can close the racial wealth gap for our community. So thanks again, and we'll be talking to y'all soon. I greatly appreciate y'all.
Thanks for having me.
All right, good
Have a
night,
good
y'all.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Go
Have a good
vote.
night.
Have a good night. Appreciate it. Hey,
I'm sorry, I
Talk
cut
soon.
somebody off when they were talking. My bad.
No, it's all good. I told you, you know, you asked me, it's like, are you sure? Or so I'm like, nah, we gonna let you do your thing. So good job,
Well,
Robbie. Thank you, Donovan.
thank-
Are we still live, Ray? You know that, right? But
Oh Lord, this is still live. Okay. Well, let me know what you want me to do with all that stuff, that data. It's yours if you want it. Whenever.
Yeah, it was. No, Robbie. It was so many folks on the panel that would have made it move even. But yeah, I definitely want to see it. You know.
can you send